Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought today we would revisit something that has been interesting in War Thunder since it's been released, and that's the idea of aircraft carriers and them actually being playable. Since the modernization, I suppose, of aircraft carriers in War Thunder, what you've ended up having is 3 of them being added, starting off with the Baku. Now, the Baku has some interesting stuff on it. It has, of course, the main guns, which are on the front of it, the fast-firing ones, and then, of course, the AA guns, which are sat on, well, all over it, I suppose, is more of a apt description of them when it comes to the good old 30mm. And one of the things about this machine is the simple fact that in a user mission it is playable. I'll link the user mission down below so you can have a look yourself and you can kind of give this thing a go. Now, these aircraft carriers were added in 2020. Recently we've also had some more information regarding aircraft carriers being playable in the mobile version of War Thunder. That basically means that since these vehicles have the capabilities of being played, the only question is how Gaijin is going to fit them in the game and how they're going to work. Obviously the Baku being more of a VTOL carrier, basically the heavy aircraft carrying cruiser of the Project 1143.1.4 design, the Baku, was built in 1986 and was soon enlisted into the Soviet Navy. During the military service, performed combat missions in the Black, Mediterranean and Barents Sea and took part in exercises. Also, at the same time, the ship's aircraft group included vertical takeoff and landing Yak-38M aircraft, as well as anti-submarine deck helicopters. And in 1990, the aircraft carrying cruiser was renamed to the Admiral of the Soviet Union fleet, the Gorshkov, and it was used to test the supersonic VTOL, the Yak-141, which just got added into the game. And in 2000, the ship was sold to India. After a series of upgrades for the needs of the Indian Navy, in 2013, the ship was transferred to India, where she received the name Vikramaditya. So, the vehicle itself, at least in War Thunder, can be fully playable. It can be ready to go. The only question is, how do they fit it mechanically in the game itself? And that really is the question for these machines. It isn't whether it can be done, it's how do you fit it in the meta, which is the good old one which sits in War Thunder right now. Another one which was added is, of course, the HMS Ark Royal. This is a Royal Navy aircraft carrier, and it was one of the first to use an angled landing deck, which is pretty interesting. Also, the ship was laid down as the Irresistible, but was renamed in honor of the famous World War II aircraft carrier, the HMS Ark Royal, and from the deck of which Swordfish aircraft took off, that inflicted critical damage on the formidable German battleship, of course the Bismarck. The newer Ark Royal didn't take part in combat, but actively participated in various exercises and tests, including general exercises in NATO. At the end of the 60s, after modernization, the landing deck received an even greater angle, and the more modern carrier-based aircraft, like the Buccaneer and Phantom, could be based on it. Thus, the Ark Royal became the only non-US aircraft carrier capable of operating Phantoms. The air group on the ship had about 40 units of jet aircraft and deck-based helicopters. At the time of its decommissioning in 1979, the Ark Royal was the last British aircraft carrier with catapults and also arrested landing. So the vehicle itself is slightly different in terms of its usability compared to the Baku. One of the issues that a lot of people have brought up with these machines is the fact that they're heavily reliant on their aircraft. The Baku has a ton of guns on it, you know, whether it's 30mm, whether it's rapid-firing, higher caliber guns. This machine doesn't. It basically just has its engines. It does have some ammo stowage on it, at least it seems, and then of course the fuel tanks as well. They're pretty well modeled on the inside and on the outside. They're absolutely beautiful machines. The only question is, how do you integrate these things, as I said, with the current way that naval works, and how do you also make it so they work with other players? Like, can other players land on these things? Can other players do stuff with them? Who knows at the end of the day? And the fact that they're here, the fact that they were fully modeled, and the fact that right now in game they're not really used in many areas apart from some EC battles and also some test drives, and also at the same time some aerialistic battles. It seems kind of sad that these things don't see a lot more of the game. I wonder if at some point in the future, just like War Thunder Mobile, we'll see stuff like this more around the place. The last of the modern carriers that was added to the game in 2020 is of course the USS Forrestal. This is an American aircraft carrier and was built in 1954 based on the experience gained by the American Navy during the Second World War. Also, it was focused on carrying jet aircraft since it was built in the 50s. Also, at the same time, the ship's operational record was quite extensive, from training missions in home waters to a show the flag in the Mediterranean and participation in the Vietnam War. The aircraft carrier set the record for the heaviest aircraft to take off and land on the deck in a series of tests of the American C-130 Hercules, when the massive turboprop transport aircraft successfully took off and landed on the Forrestal deck several times. This aircraft carrier is infamous for several accidental fires that killed a large number of its crew members, the most tragic occurring during the Vietnam War, when more than 130 personnel died and 21 aircraft were irretrievably lost. The ship was decommissioned in '93 and sold for scrap for 1 cent. So, definitely a bit of a bargain. This machine is kind of a halfway house between the Baku and the Ark Royal. It does have some armament on it, but it is very limited to these guns back here. Also, at the same time, you have, of course, all the stuff in the bottom there. It's a little bit better protected compared to the rest. But this is one which I suppose could fit more into the game if, once again, you had stuff such as, carriers which people could take off from and also land off. They would just have to be way away from the battle and not really doing too much. The idea of playable aircraft carriers is an interesting one. It's one which many have brought up and talked about, and with the revelation of all of the different submarine voice lines coming in, and the fact that we have the mobile version which has a bunch of these features already, I think it's safe to say that stuff like these carriers or similar ones will have a place when it comes to naval forces. The only real question is how, and if that's something that can be answered, hopefully we'll see something about it this year or maybe even the next. The first one is of course stuff like submarines, and then we start going into the world of playable aircraft carriers. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Millie Draper, Juan the Panda, Nick R. Kupila, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie B. Young, Peter Grayling, Jerry Provolt, Bareen, Alan Hacker, Sem Arslan, Uncle Bean, Derek R., and Lafouche for supporting the channel.